Good morning, and welcome to Ask DeAnna Anything with DeAnna Batdorf. DeAnna is an Ayurvedic practitioner, mind body educator, lymphatic specialist, and DeAnna Essentials formulator. Nothing is TMI for DeAnna. And the DeAnna Essentials mission is a place for all people to heal, learn, and grow. We provide a community of support to empower individuals with knowledge, tools, and skills for their optimal well-being. So yay, here we are for this month's Ask DeAnna Anything. And we have some really great, juicy questions for today, really proving that nothing is TMI for DeAnna. So we invite whatever questions you have, if you want to drop them in the chat. And we're grateful for all the awesome questions that have come in already. And also so grateful for DeAnna's willingness to dive into any of the juicy topics that you all want to discuss. So with that, DeAnna, anything you want to start us off with today?
I'll start us off with the very thing I need today, and a little bit of just remembering breath and moment to moment. Took a little bit for me to get here today. and sometimes that's just the truth, and it's okay. And then how do we breathe into it and just kind of like, find our 100%. We don't want a 180. We don't want a 80. 100. How do we get to that place? And breath is really where it's at. And it gets so overlooked throughout our entire life, even though it's the first thing we do and the last thing we do. It gets so poo-pooed and overlooked. And, talking about juicy, it's oxygen building, which is the beginning of H2O, water itself, and the things that calm us down and damper us down when we are in any kind of elevated states or stressful, scattered states, which are all Vata and Pitta. And then guess what you need for balance? You need Kapha. So let's not forget, we don't want to avoid Kapha. We want to utilize the balance of that. We need that fire.
Looks like we may have just lost DeAnna for a minute there, so we'll see if she comes back. We're dealing with all the elements today. We got the rain going on outside, same as the rain, the water, and our breath and our bodies. So we'll have some patience with the Wi-Fi. Oh, there we go.
Hey.
Yay!
Yeah, see?
Water on the inside, water on the inside.
Gotta breathe, And so where was I? I was talking about the importance of breath and what is it to bring yourself back into balance when you've lost it. And usually you don't have to wonder, did I stop breathing or not? It's like the moment you feel something that's off of your flow and you feel like you've lost some level of your balance, we should know that some part of our breath, which is from our pelvis all the way to the head, and then our exhales all the way back down to the root, somewhere in there is affected. And that's when our breathing tells us. So how do we learn to even read that and trust it? And then that's how I started trusting how important it is for oxygen levels. So when we
This is a good moment for all of us to practice our breathing, and thank you all for being here listening in. So I'll just take a couple of moments to take some deep breaths while DeAnna's Wi-Fi kicks back in. Really sending that breath down to your belly, down to your root. Just noticing where the breath is holding you today. all the way from the root up to a crown chakra. Let's see if I'm hearing anything from DeAnna. This is also a great moment if anyone has any questions that they want to drop in the chat. You're more than welcome to pop those in there, and we'll get them either today or for the next one. We'll just keep our deep, nice breath going. A really nice start to the day, especially on these kind of rainy days when we might not be doing as much movement outside. It's really nice to have that internal movement through the breath to get our circulation going. There we go. Looks like we have DeAnna back.
Good.
Hey, awesome.
So you lost me again, not you.
Yes.
In this.
Mm-hmm.
I did such a beautiful breathing exercise.
Oh no. Okay, well I kept a little breathing exercise going too. So I was like, well.
I was just saying how we expand and we move all the way to the top of our head and we have to meet the world. And that's a reality every time we breathe. And then when we exhale, everything just pours over us and we go all the way back down to the pelvis, the juiciest place we have. And we just land there and we just wait. We don't have to do a whole bunch of stuff to make ourselves breathe. We're going to do it, even in our sleep. So you just wait for that expansion again. And if you try to breathe, you might have to change some of your patterns, but that's the most important piece of just even starting your day. Like if you want to start really getting a hold of your breath more, it would be about doing it even when you wake up in the morning. Like you can still lay there and rest, but you can take some big, huge belly breaths. And it's amazing how much that wakes me up and stabilizes me. And then that's sort of a little bit more about what my day looks like. And it gets better and better as the years go by. It's a practice. But talking about juicy and thinking, I'm excited to see what our juicy questions are today. But speaking of juicy, this is where it's at. And, it's going to go into probably some of the topics. If we've got some juicy ones, it's going to go into some of the topics of what it is to even connect to that root chakra. And we have to make a connection. We have to have a relationship and communications with that root chakra to be able to, use it as we wish and use it clean, and as fuel. So that's a whole other thing because it's a fuel, but it could be definitely something that could be a lot of work and then takes a lot of energy. So how do we turn those things around? How do we turn those, and it really all goes.
While we're waiting, thank you, Noah, for your awesome question. I love that. How the doshas like to receive physical intimacy from their partners. What a great question. I'm sure that DeAnna's going to be really excited to see that one as soon as she's back. And yeah, it's so interesting to consider, especially because it's all about finding balance, and relationships are one of those things that really allow us to find balance and also can take us out of balance. So I'm really curious to hear what she's going to say about how the doshas like to receive physical intimacy from their partners. Because I could totally imagine, just going along the lines of like, okay, Vata probably is more spiritually inclined and probably likes to have more like emotional relating or, just various forms of spirituality and connection within their intimacy. Oh, great, we have DeAnna back. Awesome. I was just reading a really awesome question that we got from Genoa. which is awesome. About how, let's see, we lost you again. Okay. All right. Looks like we got you.
Boy, I really hope this can work out in this
I know.
weather.
We got that big rainstorm energy coming through.
Yep.
All
Okay,
right.
so
What
let's
shall we
get
do?
into the questions.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, well, we just got this really fun question from Noah in the chat, and so I feel like we should just roll with that, and then we can get to all of our other questions.
Oh, awesome.
Noah says, "Good morning. Can you speak on how each of the doshas like to receive physical intimacy from their partners?"
Wow, that's a good one. Okay. So what we're really going to speak of here is more Vata, Pitta, Kapha. And how do they like to receive? This is the question, right? How do they like to receive their intimacy? And wow, are we different in our behaviors? And we need different things, which is why we have so many different directions we can go with intimacy, right? So Vata is the primary qualities of cold and dry. It makes up ether and air. So I'm just building a container here, right? And ether and air are about their nervous systems, and they're the sensory of sound and touch. So right there, the fact that they're ruled by sound and touch is they're touchy-feely. They feel their nervous system. And there's another reason why they feel their nervous system so much, because they run like either.
Okay, we got
Yep.
you.
So I was saying they're more thin in stature, just like ether and air is as an element. And so their nerves are more exposed. So they may even have heightened sensory if they're really depleted, too cold, too dry. They're going to have heightened sensory. So they might need the very opposite, which is like really solid contact and maybe long, deep, thoughtful strokes. And they're going to need that to be that person can meet the energy beyond some fear and anxiety, because cold is fear and anxiety is dry. So they're going to need a grounding depth and a level of safety and a very low voice. So they're probably not going to like the person who's like giggling and playing and and that's great for some people. I can take some of that myself, or maybe even dish it out. But is that going to work for that person? That's going to throw off the Vata that needs to like figure out how to stay deep down in their root when they're more about the ethers above them and the big ideas. So it's going to take them a lot longer. They're going to need more foreplay, and that's for safety building. But it's also warming up. And they need time to get juicy. So they want everything to be kind of methodical and played out, and like the lighting really would change them. If there's music, it's going to shift sound. All those things are actually going to throw off the Vata. And so it's really good with this Vata partner to even ask, like, what position are they most comfortable in? Because it doesn't mean you have to stay in that position. But if you're going to build safety, you might as well go to comfortable positions first. And that's really going to build upon play. in that intimate, time, sharing love. So
Mhm.
that I think is the things I think of for Vata, and they really are the furthest away from their root. So it's a very important detail. Like with men, and as I've studied and talked to a lot of men and women about their intimacy, I love building safe container for that because I like normalizing everything. Like
Mhm.
literally, I think everything just needs to be normalized and then looked at. Excess or deficient. Um, but when I speak to men, this could be like pre-ejaculation. It's not just that they're so excited they can't contain themselves. Pre-ejaculation is usually connected more to the person went outside of themselves in their bliss, when
Mm.
we really have to stay down in the root to
Mhm.
stay in contact and to stay connected and to be in control, you know,
Mhm.
of their lingam, you know? And so I think, and then with female Vata, they're gonna need that deep, fully engaged interaction.
Mhm.
So even if that's gonna be, a hand or a toy, no matter what it's gonna be, or with yourself, you know, um, no matter what that looks like, they're going to need to have a little bit more of a like, stay right there for a minute and let me breathe. And they more want to feel the energy of that moving in and out, and so that's a really important detail for longevity, you know, um, with male related play and longevity and like getting somewhere, maybe clitorally for female. Yeah. Or even just someone with a clitoris, whatever. So you get to play with this however you want according to who you are. But it's a beautiful conversation about, and see how I'm even kind of going into that low and deep,
Mhm.
representing Vata intimacy, I hope, and that's really a cool thing. So let's keep moving here and look at Pitta. So Pitta's ruled by play. And they
Mhm.
like things to be kind of edgy. They're fire. Think about a fire edge. I mean, hello, And so, fire's going to have a little bit like they may do really good with being like caught off guard. It's like, oh, you're going to wake me up that way? Okay. You know what I mean? Other people may have traumas or may have other things where they don't like that. But Pitta's gonna, maybe they're gonna be more aroused or more engaged if it is kind of an interesting position or an interesting interaction. And they're the ones who
Mhm.
are visually designed.
Mhm.
So, like, thinking about presenting yourself, so like what are you wearing, how are you moving your body, how are you approaching? So there's an innate sexy that's visually designed, and that could be setting up the room too. What if somebody's Pitta Vata, or Pitta's had some trauma, so they have some safety? It's like how you have the lights and the music and the layout, that's important stuff. I think of a Pitta going over to someone's house for the first time, and how that house looks means something big. Vata might be
Definitely.
like, oh, that's really cute. Oh, look at you. You are really messy. Oh, Pitta's like, that bed. They're definitely related to their, extension of visuals. And they're gonna want to have that edge play. And
Mhm.
and they may be someone who really enjoys that laughter as like a form of like opening up pleasure. So
Mhm.
they're all about it, cracking a joke. You have to stop your laughing so hard with your, mate, the person you're playing with, and then all of a sudden, they're back to it.
Totally.
And they also um, are connected to, just like, yeah, not just surroundings, but they're connected to your body language because that's a visual too. you know. They take body cues really well, body language cues, and they may even like be so kind of in the intimate or sexually driven that you didn't think it was a cue. You're like, we're just friends, you know, and they're kind of like, I thought, you know, when you rub my back, you know, and I was like, I was just consoling you, you know, and they're like, you rubbed my back, you touched me, so here we go, you know. So they're pretty ready, and sometimes that is a little bit challenging, but that's why I find fiery people look for fiery people. So they can really meet in that like depth, that edgy collision of intimacy. And I will say in relationship though, that can be some of the messiest relationships I've seen is two pittas, you know, just the truth, you know, because then there's a little power struggle. There's a little like, you know, my fire, no, your fire, you know, and opinions, and they might clash more. And Pitta has trust issues, you know, so they build trust sometimes by being in control, you know, and then you can trust me. And it's like, no, wait a minute, what about trusting you? Or what about the other side? So there can be a lot of fire, and fire makes more fire. It can work. It's just, can you become mature together? Can you like, who's got the talking stick? You know, so they're going to have to be like, no, you listen. And then I speak, and then no, I listen and you speak. They might have to learn a little nonviolent communication and speaking for themselves, you know. So they can be, when I speak to people about their partners in intimacy and their partner's not there, they'll often be like, they're Pitta. Like almost like it says everything. I know what they're saying, but usually I'm like, yeah, but in what way? Because you know, too much fire can even lean into abuse. And then you have to be all, this is not just, I don't like it that way. It's, and this is usually fire, you know, the fiery person, or you in your fire. Or you may be actually having to set a boundary in intimacy. Like we don't go that fast and furious and meet that much muscle without permission. And there may be like, no, there's a boundary that needs to be made here. But Pittas do like that kind of a little more fast, furious. They are of the musculature. They're designed more muscularly. So they want a little bit of a deeper impact, you know? And they may like a little, you know, a little slap, you know, they might like a little, you know, rough and tumble. And that's just how they're designed, because their muscles, you know, they're also people who love deep tissue massage, you know, and that makes total sense, even though those are two very different things, you know, but there's connection because they're both touch related, you know, even if we could say professional and, you know, personal. I would never deny that there is a touch relation that plays out in just different ways therapeutically. But, you know, meeting that muscle is what they'll need, you know? And then if we look at Kapha's water and earth, right? That Pitta was fire and water, you know, they're passionately driven with their fire. And Kapha is water and earth. So water and earth is a lot more, they're deep because earth is deep and it's dense. So they're going to need more activation. Often when I'm speaking to someone and they're like, I just can't get to that pleasure. I just can't get there. I'll say, you know, it might be really good to like start with a bunch of massage on the thighs and on the butt and on the abdomen, like get some massage and like literally open up the floodgates, because water and earth makes mud. And if they're too muddy, they just can't, it's going to, come on, a pot with mud in it is going to be harder to stir.
Yeah.
Right? So they're going to need stir, you know, and that's the person who I'm like, have you ever tried just a tiny little tap of peppermint oil? Tap, not a drop, people. A tap, you know, or make a just perfect little salve that's got some peppermint in it, and it becomes a nice little smear. And woo! Okay, now just think about some peppermint in your mouth Now think about a slight little bit of peppermint
Yes.
in your loins, right? It's activating, it's opening, it's exciting. And they're smell and taste related. So I'm kind of like, peppermint lickable is a lovely thing. You put a little peppermint in honey. I used to have a whole line of lickables. I
Wow,
should probably go back to those. They were really good. All
definitely.
aphrodisiacs,
Yes.
and I had a cinnamon cardamom peppermint. I'm gonna
Yeah.
remake that. Nobody steal that from me, please. No showing. You can make it yourself. But no, serious, it's beautiful. Those are all actually known aphrodisiacs. But their excitability, their dispersing of energy. This person needs like massage and a little vigorous, kind of like every cough I've ever talked to, because I got some myself.
Mhm.
You've got a body image issue, but when it comes to intimacy, you really want someone just to get in there and go for it, even though they're shy with their bodies on the exterior, because if someone can just kind of, and kind of stir me, and just like go into those tissues, right? I'm like, ooh, they are liking me. And now I can open up and I can feel safe.
Mhm.
And now my body's okay. And this person likes my body. And then they can engage, they can stir themselves from there.
Yeah.
That's what's going to stir them. The truth is that stirs a kapha. You don't want to avoid any of the weight or the areas. It's like, And if you're with that person, then you should, you're probably digging on that type of body type, and if you haven't dug on that kind of body type because you think everything's got to be all tonified and petite, you may not know what you're missing.
For sure.
Because Kapha, hello, if Kapha gives the best hug, who's going to raise their hand that Kapha knows how to give an awesome hug?
Most definitely. No doubt about that.
Right?
Mhm.
Well, what else do you think they might be able to do? You might just
Yeah.
get wrapped up in that Kapha and just be like,
Uh-huh.
woo, this is the most juicy place I've ever been. Just
Yes.
saying.
Love
But
up
they're
on
going to
those
want to be
tapas.
touched. Yeah, and it may be a real edge for the kapha to let their partner massage them and like see them. But I got to say, having a partner who did that for me, it was the most valuable thing that's ever happened.
Mm.
Was, having someone kind of be like, I want to touch there. I want to, really be in there. I like this body type, I like you and I'm going to show you. And kaphas need that for self-worth and development of like how they feel, because we have so much horrible conditioning in our society. I love to think of myself as somebody who like works beyond conditioning, still there. I'm still
Definitely.
a subject of it. I've still felt it. It's still real, you know? So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind with kapha, you know? Gotta love that up and just get on in there, and it's, and they're kind of a mix. They want that stir to get there, but at some point, that's enough exercise. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
And then they just want to like cuddle and go into the depths of connection. I mean, like Kapha's about just the ultimate merge. That's what you're
Mhm.
feeling in that hug.
Yeah.
The safety of that depth of merge is woo.
Mhm.
Yes. And there were combos. Hopefully everyone's hearing their combinations here.
Mhm.
They're hearing that like I'm Pitta Kapha, so then, you look at the terrain of the two. Somebody else might be a Vata Pitta. And then all of a sudden they're looking at the terrain of like, okay, I might need slow and grounding and embodiment, but at some point I'm going to want that person to get a move on
Mhm.
and kick it down into some, Pitta passion. Yeah. So
Definitely.
Vata embodiment, this is kind of fun. Vata embodiment, Pitta passion,
Mm.
and Kapha motivational
Mm.
or Kapha stimuli. But like that, if I was going to try to sum it up, that'd be a great little webinar just all on its own and go even
Definitely.
further into the conversation,
Yeah.
right?
I'm like, we got a whole class around this. Like, let's
I I'm telling you, I would love to do a weekend course on just like
Yeah.
personalities, behaviors around sexuality, sensuality,
Mm,
you know,
love.
and like what's an easy click or what's the differences, because really you should be able to be with whoever you see and whoever you're connected to, and then it shouldn't be dependent on what their constitution is per se. You know, it's the connection, and is it real, and is it there, and then you work with each other, because that means y'all got weaknesses and strengths. Scott
Mhm.
and I are complete opposites, and we've just learned to meet each other. So I know what he needs and I give that to him, and he knows what I need and he gives that to me. And then we back and forth in that. And but we do have different needs, you know? And then you find those in between meeting places where it's just like, pow! You're like, yeah, there we got it. You know, we have gotten there. And that's a beautiful thing too, you know.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to just say one more thing. I hope I'm not going on too much about this. I know there's other questions, um but I think there's also things to think about, like how often. So like Pitta kind of has a little more of an excessive issue, so they may think daily is great. It's actually too much energy for kind of anybody. I mean, that's like, you know, certain specific times, you know. And then you're kind of like, yep, let's just do this, we're on vacation or we're in a new relationship or whatever. And
Mhm.
I'm not saying, you know, not to be intimate regularly, but daily is it becomes daunting, and it's a lot of energy, and that passion could be put in places that could, you know, even kind of go out into the world, I think, you know. So it's like, come on, you know. So that's like in a moment of time. That's Pitta's kind of sometimes their mindset is like that's how they
Mhm.
get their yayas out. I'm like, could you go exercise a little bit?
Yeah.
Because they need to get their yayas out, because they get extra
Uh-huh.
fire that needs to be sweated out. You
Mhm.
know, they're big sweaters in intimacy too. So if you're like,
Mhm.
my partner sweats like crazy, yeah, probably Pitta. Um, so they do better on like every 3 days. Or like I'll be like, how about you take care of yourself for 2 days, and then, you know, and then see where your partner's at from there, you know, or partners, you know, whatever their truth is. So, and then Vata, you know, Vata's kind of innately, they have less juice, cold and dry. So they
Mhm.
do really good with like a deep, long, beautiful session once a week. Like really just going into the depths of like losing time and, you know, everything. And, you know, and they can often, if they've got some pitta in there, or if they're maybe, you know, during their fertile times of the moon, you know, that's male and female related, it's everybody. um you know, they might then be more of a like, okay, 3 days in a row, and then kind of weekly is more natural, and then 3 days in a row weekly is more natural, so they get a little more going on there, you know. And Kapha is what we end up like, if you're in a long-term relationship, a lot of things that happen here, a lot of things that happen is like the Kapha sets in. You start
Mhm.
getting stuck in your routines, or stuck in a rut, as we say, you know, and all of a sudden you're just kind of like, yeah, I do love you, I want to be here, but again, you know. And it just happens, and so many people talk about it, and sometimes it's exhaustion, sometimes you've lost your playing connection, and so that's another stir of the pot, right? So that's when I'll tell, you know, partners like, you got to keep it alive.
Mhm.
You know, I'm in a going on 28 years on April Fool's Day. Holy crap, I can't even believe it. Nor can my partner. We're like, how did this happen? It's so fun. We're still in love, and we're still intimate, and it's fabulous.
Mhm.
And you have to keep it alive. So you got to know when, you know, to kind of like really go the distance, or do something really, you know, kind of gregarious, or, you know, sensually driven, that you know your partner's going to be driven crazy, and you're just like, okay, I'm going to do that, you know.
Totally.
And so, you know, I think these are important details, very important details. Like, I'm going to tell a tiny little story. I think it's actually, and I don't think it would be crossing any boundaries with my partner. So, like, for instance, I've been missing Scott so much. He was gone for a while. So I was like, what can I do to make this fun? I'm going to see my man again, right?
Yeah.
My fabulous partner. And so I found at a thrift store this really great Star Wars um uh old 70s t-shirt.
Yes.
And it's a picture of Luke Skywalker and it says, I know. Really good line in Star Wars where she's like, I love you. And he's all, I know.
Yeah.
And I knew he would know the punchline because, like, he's the dude who's like all Star Wars, not like Frico, but we both grew up with it. And so, anyways, so this is being playful, right? Doesn't have to be like full on, I'm a sex bot every time.
Yep.
So I wore my which, it was pretty sexy,
Yes.
And so I've got this shirt on and he's just hanging out and I put on Star Wars theme music. I showed up with my shirt on. I know.
Yeah.
And he got it immediately. And he was just like, oh my gosh, that is so hilarious. And it was our sweet little playful introduction to like me just, showing my partner I know who he is and I know what's, and giving a little play and a little introduction and just having fun, and I think those things and are super important just to kind of like be in your playful self and not get yourself stuck in a conditioning to what you think you're supposed to be. You know what I mean? As we are in the porn nation, like we have to make sure we are not like subjecting ourselves to something and then expecting ourselves to be that, but you can, consider like what is it you're, into and like how can you be that yourself and develop that yourself. And these are very important questions in today's world. But I'm telling you a little intimate story because I think it's a good story of like, what are we even hiding from? These are fun, playful, amazing things we do that, keep us engaged and excited if you're in a long-term relationship.
I love that piece, just bringing in the silliness and the weirdness and like being your authentic self because I feel like that's what really does create that long-term glue is like, all right, we're both just being ourselves.
Yeah.
However many people are involved, everyone's being themselves.
Yeah.
And I love these just like conversation starters, like just being able to go through all those things you just said, and I'll kind of put down those main kind of categories or hallmarks that you said in the show notes so that people can just chat with their partners and just be like, so which of these things sound the most exciting to you and interesting and fun? So I feel like
Yes.
that's a great way. Just having these kind of conversations is such an awesome way, even to excite some intimacy. So
Yeah.
love that.
And we really are taught to be like, I know I need this, I need that. And those are truths. But sometimes you get what you need when you offer up what somebody else needs.
Definitely.
And then, it's like a little bit less complicated. I'm like, let me just go into a little fun role play for somebody who I know is going to appreciate it and put myself in a little bit of an awkward position, but not that awkward. And because I'm like, oh, let's see how this goes. So yeah, may that help everybody.
I love that. So great. Okay, well, we have a few more awesome, juicy questions.
Good.
So I'd say we just keep on rolling with it while we're on this particular topic. So here's a fun anonymous question. Also, my door is creaking in the background. Okay, so I was like, what is this creaking sound? Okay, since I started dating my partner, I've started to smell like him. Then he left for 2 months, and it took me about that amount of time to start to have my own scent back. Then 3 days before he returned, I smelled like him again. I thought that it was because we shared microbiomes that we smell the same, but now I'm wondering if it's hormonal. This is crazy. What's going on?
I love this. Okay.
Yeah, that's so fun.
So we are talking about pheromones.
Hmm.
There's a few other things we'll discuss too, but it's mostly pheromones. And I think microbiome has a lot to do with it also. But if it was microbiome, it's probably more like somebody has yeast and it's contagious, and then you got some yeast and then you're smelling. So you have to kind of decipher first, like, are you both smelling like yeast or not? Because, that's transferable and it's so common. And I think that's what we have to really give, just a little bit of time to. Doesn't quite answer the question on they're coming back in 3 days, but I do think that's one factor that could be a toxicity shared. But if it's not a toxicity shared, we're talking about pheromones. And pheromones are, receptors. They're neurotransmitter receptors that are connected to your hormonal health, that are governed by your pituitary gland behind your right eye. And then it sends a message to the hypothalamus behind the left eye. And then it sends those messages to your body. And we are chemicals. We are made of chemicals, and we off gas, which is how we even get odor. And hormones, we know, have very specific odors to them. So we are talking about all the hormones and the pheromones that become connection, because, we also have smell. The olfactory, the nose is the closest thing linked to the limbic brain. Our limbic brain is the center of our brain on our brainstem, and it's where we store all our memories and emotions. And it's more driven by smell than any other sensory we have. But we store all sensory in there. But it's like direct olfaction, direct to the limbic brain. So we already have a memory of someone's smell and how we feel about them and how we've maybe been in contact with them, our senses. Then we have all the hormones and the pheromones that get created from there. And then you could be getting certain pheromones that are in their smell that become more dominant in you that weren't dominant before. And then you start exuding those pheromones, but they're maybe not the same that you always had. So you might off gas them quicker. And then you get more odor. So a lot of the odor in our armpits, for instance, and I have a feeling this person is talking about their armpits and not their, ear or odor or their poop or their urine or their even reproductive fluids. They're probably talking about armpits. Wasn't said, but that would be my guess, because they're really close to the brain. And then that's a relation, that activates those sweat glands that release to the armpits. Yeah. So that would be my guess. And that's kind of what we're talking about, is like the pheromonious self. There's a really good book. I keep trying to bring it up. Everyone probably knows I'm not that great at authors and directors and blah, blah, blah. I don't know why. But there's a really good book. It looks like it's really about pheromones and the hormones people make and why are we attracted. So it's very specific to brain hormones and reproductive hormones and how they smell. They even talk about this is why you may not see your partner, but you might turn your head because you smelled your partner.
Wow.
Or someone you could partner with.
Wow.
That you're connected to. And this is very true, and think back, have you ever not seen someone, but you turned just to see someone and you just didn't have the idea that I smell somebody, I'm going to turn my head. It just happens. You're and then you're yep.
Wow. Crazy.
And so we smell people more, and it could be connected to mother, father. It could be connected to bloodline, ancestral. That's why we can actually end up being actually, that person ended up being more like my brother, not my soulmate, How did that happen? How did we end up with someone who feels more like a sister? you know and the way that happens is we have our old faction is connected to all kinds of connections, all kinds of relations, and you
Mhm.
might have like, ooh, my bloodline is attractive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just natural, that they end up being more like the feeling of a brother, or like somebody you're like, I can't believe I never saw that it was my mom all along. Like, well, there could have even been a smell relation. And it's something I'll ask people. They'll be like, they do maybe kind of smell like them. Oh my God. It's like, it's natural, it really is natural. So, that would be where I would go with this conversation, as just a starting point of like, how does that even happen? What is the name of that book? I'm going to have to find it.
Yeah, well, we can put it out there in the universe through.
Really great read. Jeez.
Put it in the show notes. Yeah.
Yep. So
Figure
I'll
it
get
out.
to that, and we will at some point put that out there. But yeah.
Awesome. Wow. I love that. I love learning about pheromones because it's
Oh,
this invisible part of ourselves that we are so affected by
and attracted.
and
It's
attracted to.
attraction related,
Yeah.
reaction related,
Mhm.
and we even can get like a little addicted or get a pattern around those certain pheromones that overtake us, and why do we stay in abusive relationships, or why did I do that? Why did I stay?
Mhm.
It's like, well, there's things that become so familiar and so in the memory that it's not that easy to just be like, I'm out of here. There's a connection, that is undeniable, that starts with that smell. And why in 3 days before they came back? Well, you're thinking about this person you're intimate with, and their pheromonious smell and their taste, by the way, both, depending on what you're sharing and doing. Usually
Mhm.
taste is related too.
Yeah.
and and you start conjuring up like, ooh, I'm gonna see that person,
Mhm.
3 days away. And
Uh-huh.
you're literally pulling those pheromones to the surface in your own
Mhm.
psyche.
Totally.
So
Like, all right, time to sync up.
you know it.
Awesome. Well, here's another great juicy question. Can't wait to hear. So, here it is. For the last few years, I have been using what I know as of the pinch technique. This is a method used while engaging in sexual intercourse for where the duration of my orgasm I press into a spot towards the back of my perineum and just before the anus. The result is I orgasm but do not ejaculate. Furthermore, I am able to remain sexually aroused and erect for many more orgasms to come. This has forever changed things in the bedroom for me, but I'm curious if there are any potential health issues with doing this.
Okay. So this has been documented since the beginning of time. This idea of withholding and recycling what's called ojas, our vital fluids, as a way of energizing self to continue or to secure your longevity. Like they would say, the weaker your health, the more you would want to internalize your orgasm as a way of developing your ojas and not releasing your vital longevity fluids. So this
Mhm.
has been being done for a very long time. But it's usually done in specific timelines and not done as a lifestyle.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So I think if you're doing it because you're like, I'm really tired and I don't want to give up any more of my juice, or if you are having one of these beautiful long journeys, multi-orgasm journeys with someone or yourself, by all means, that would be a place to kind of like use it as a replenishment tool versus, giving up a bunch of energy. So I think that that's a really beautiful thing, and it's not easy for everyone to master. So for somebody to be able to say, yeah, I just do that particular spot, and it kind of retains it, is cool, because some people have a very hard time mastering that. And then I'm just going to say, is there any contraindications? The only one would be is if it became where you never, because, okay, let's talk about the value of release, right? So I just gave you the value of retaining. But what's the value of release? The value of release is that you are fully just letting yourself unabandonedly like get some full on relief. There's no practice, there's no retention, there's no like, I gotta hold this. There's just letting go and just the massive dispersion of pleasure that you get, that is just like the exhaustion. So what if there may be a little bit of a like, I always need to have multiple orgasms to be satisfied? Well, you might be feeling that because you're not just like letting yourself be fully, completely satisfied and completely releasing and no control, zero control.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a brilliant value in just giving that. If you're with a partner, just giving that to them and yourself. And they get to just see you in the most, kind of loopy, I mean, it's like being drunk, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's just like,
Yeah.
it's like, I just smoked a joint. I'm like, oh, it's the best DMT ever,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it's true.
It is true.
And you're just like loopy with that person or loopy with yourself. And I think there is so much to be said for just letting yourself be and give it up and share and just like fall into complete rest, and sometimes that's how I can find if I'm super exhausted, because I can just so energize the bunny through because I love my life so much. I can just like boom, boom, boom. But like sometimes, one of those lovely just releasing orgasms, and I'm just like, oh my God, it's so tired. And then I'm like, ooh, that's my truth. It got me to like, I need to look at that so I don't, do too much and can really gauge things. So I think there's a whole bunch of value on both sides. I think both are just a different experience. So, there is something to be said for retaining your ojas. But I also know that I have talked to people who feel like it gets a little selfish if it's always what is. Because then you're not saying, I'm going to give up a whole bunch of juice and share it with you. It's kind of like, I'm gonna, make sure I'm taken care of, so I think that there's a little, and then there's the person who is so about that release and that getting the yayas out that they're kind of like leave you behind. And then you're all, what? Excuse me. Excuse me. I'm still here. And then that can become its own imbalance too. So I think there is strength in both. I think there's weakness in both. So why not use both? Why not do both?
Yeah.
And then you get to be like accordion. It's kind of like, I'm cold, I need to eat hot. I'm hot, I need to eat cold. Here you're saying I'm deficient, depleted, I'm dry, I don't have a tons of juice. Better to retain my juice and sustain myself. Or I would love to be able to stay in pleasure with somebody for hours and hours. Okay, smart time to retain and hold that. So you've got it to keep going, the longevity building. But I do think there is a time when that, somebody you're with or even yourself, just, it'd be really nice to just give it up and just share the love and just feel that with somebody instead of a practice, So let's remember what's kind of natural, and then let's remember that one of them is a practice.
Totally.
How cool. Do both. Same with breath. I'm teaching natural breathing. How do we breathe? We belly breathe to collect oxygen. But there's all kinds of other breathing exercises I use that are like retaining and holding my breath, or maybe engaging my core, or like breath of fire, which is opposite breathing technique. And then I'm practicing a breathing technique versus just breathing naturally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think there's equal value. And then when do you use them? And yeah.
Wow. It's awesome. I love that. And we're coming up on our hour here. So time flies. You're talking about fun topics. So I
Oh,
feel like I've just learned so much through this these conversations that we don't necessarily have all the time, especially in the health world, which is where we should be having these conversations. So
yes.
I'm so grateful for you diving in with us and chatting about these awesome sensual sexual topics.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
so important. I mean, most people know I am touch driven. I believe in touching self. Like we should, we have the right to touch ourselves, learn about our tissues, touch ourselves, learn about and feel pleasure. Like I'm pleasure driven, I'm touch driven. I just feel like we have to be willing to no shame, normalize. We need to
Totally.
no shame, normalize. Everybody gets to choose whatever they want. They get to see if they're having healthy choices or unhealthy. We all have both. And you can kind of curb the unhealthies that you're like, oh, I might be needing that for a very interesting reason. And you get to be like, yeah, okay, it has its time, it has its pleasure, but there could be some old patterns or trauma in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other things that you're just like, no, I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
I like that, you know?
Totally.
And then we start being like, no, not only do I like that, but I like all kinds of like types of different people. Or, I might like something that is not in the norm. And then, well, guess what? That's actually more normal.
Mm-hmm.
That is normal to just like know what you like and see what you're attracted to. It is a powerful tool. It's our pleasure and knowing what we really, really are attracted to and like and want to like smell and taste and touch and see, you know, is just as important as what you do for a living should make you happy.
Mm.
I think we have taken pleasure out of our jobs and out of our work. And
Mm-hmm.
we need to also normalize that, like, no, I truly believe everyone is going to be able to make their way in life and become successful on whatever level you're looking for. If you are just making sure you are doing what makes you totally happy.
Mm.
And that means even if you just like, if you're in a place where you just need like a job to pay you because you've got a whole nother life surrounding that idea of work, then it's about being at a place that totally is an alignment. And then that's that happy. It's like, okay, I'm taking the steps to learn these things that I want to be. So I got to work at one of those places that is representing it. So I think these are both things that we should be really normalizing: our
Mm.
sexuality and our dharmic work paths,
Mm-hmm.
and like
Totally.
who are you and what's really true to you in your work path. And like that's what's going to make us happier, more sustainable people.
Definitely.
And you know, self-sustainability, as long as it's not selfish,
Mm-hmm.
making sure you're happy allows me to help other people be happy, and it allows me to make sure the earth is happy. So, wow, and look how much pleasure the earth gives us.
Mm-hmm.
It
So
is, so remember to go out in nature if you feel like you've lost your pleasure relation or you're not happy in your work.
that was a pretty perfect place to wrap up. So yeah, that is such an important memory or reminder is to go out in nature and feel that connection. Oh, she's back. Yeah,
Yeah.
feel
No,
that connection
it's
to
big.
nature. It's so important. It just the juiciest place there is, the earth. So that's of course the best way that we can replenish our our ojas and our juiciness and really connect back to who we are at our root. So that's such a good reminder, especially now that it's so moist outside after all the rain. What a great time to go walk outside barefoot and just soak it all in. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for your great questions. Thank you for joining us live here. And thank you, Deanna, for just sharing so many great tips and tricks and ideas and being so vulnerable in your shares too. Super inspiring.
Yeah.
All right. So I think with that, we'll wrap up for today and we'll see you the first Thursday of the month, which I believe might even be April 1st. Is that true? So, first Thursday of the month in April is the next time we'll see you. So, feel free to submit any of your questions online on our website, DeAnnaEssentials.com, or you can send an email to me at info@DeAnnaEssentials.com. And you can always leave us a chat during the live program. We'll see you next time.